So in the Dominican Republic, one of the first films that I watched about 5 years ago was called I Am Whatever I Feel I Am. And it talks about these intersex people whose bodies have 5 alpha reductase. So they're raised as women, and then during puberty they begin to develop as male because of an enzyme blocker in one of the alleles in the chromosomes. And then they have a choice to either continue their life identifying as female, or to transition, or I should say as women, or begin to transition in their life as men. And they can do that seamlessly because their bodies just begin to produce higher levels of testosterone. And in the film, they follow like this very large family, and they follow another person. And in the large family, some of them choose to continue to live as women, but they are ostracized because their presentation is not womanly enough. You know, you're different and we don't know what to make of you, so we'll just isolate you.
I think that there's this correlation between hyper-femininity, right, in the culture that I grew up in, which is very Dominican culture. With hyper-femininity, hyper-masculinity, it's this thing of like, okay, there's tolerance, and then there is hyper-masculinity, hyper-femininity that is imposed on you. Then there is like super sweetness, that is genuine super sweetness, and then can turn to be like fucking evil. Well, because if you have a culture, and I think that this can be found in a lot of cultures where there's hyper-femininity, hyper-masculinity, what's the turn of that? The turn of that is that there's a tolerance for queerness, for a man to live as a woman and for a woman to live as a man, because you're almost going full circle. There is the difference between there is no difference, right? I think that when you take the spectrum and like go in opposite ends, it becomes, two sides of the same coin or whatever. Mm-hmm. And with Dominican culture, it's just so. You ask any Dominican, the whole island is fucking gay. Like, Rita Indiana is such an example of Dominicanness, right? She's like an epitome of a queer Dominican person that I see myself so much, so deeply embedded in her music, and the diaspora does all of it, right? But so do other Dominicans. But you know what they do? They exile her. Why? Because she tells a certain truth that everybody is aware of, that everyone, but goes unspoken. It's just, and that is the queerness that exists throughout the whole island. Like, that is it. Like, everyone is just, it's a very, there's a hypersexuality that exists. And I think that it is positioned in a place where queerness just is, right? It's just lived. And as soon as you label it, that's where the problem begins. As soon as you threaten someone else's identity or relationship to that queerness, that's where the confrontation begins. Try to bring to light their queerness. That's where it begins. This confrontation of like, no, I'm a man, oh, no, I'm a woman, how dare you? Again, this hyper-femininity that kind of is like, and I have no problem with it in terms of it existing, and not only existing, but being a tool of empowerment. But I have a problem with the imposition of it on other people, which I think is this battle that they have with like, well, why wouldn't you want to be that? It's like, because I'm not that. I'm just not.